This year, I had a moment in my own journey, and a mentoring pastor of mine recommended a book to me, and it was a book called One Word That Will Change Your Life. All right, this will be up on the screen for you. You can see it there. And it's this idea, this whole book is just dealing with one word, boiling it down to one word, not a phrase, not a whole, motto or anything like that, but it is just narrowing it down to a single word to articulate your journey and the steps ahead. And the beauty of it is that when you hear one word, you can interpret it and take it in a variety of different ways. But the idea is that it is not arbitrary or generic or just something that you Google about. This book is very helpful, and I did this for my personal life and my own journey personally, and now we are applying these principles or these ideas to us as a church and a church family. Organizations can do this, teams can do this. You might pick this book up and do it with your family or yourself, or maybe at work, and you take a group of people or your coworkers or a team or something like that through it. But what it challenges you to do throughout this book, and it's just a short little read, is to look inward. Look at your heart. Look at what's going on. What are you feeling? What are you processing and going through? And then to look upward, look towards God and hear from Him, pray, listen, read Scripture, look to God for guidance. And then lastly, to look out. Look at your circumstances. Look at the year ahead. Look at your season. And in that, you are going to identify a key word that it keeps coming up, keep coming up. And the beauty of it is, I think it engages and motivates and guides way more than any New Year's resolution or any kind of motto or slogan or anything like that, or personal goals that we're going to have. And so for the church, I have been praying and praying and praying, and as I had quiet time and prayer time and go on walks or was reading Scripture and just contending for what God would have for our church, the word that I kept coming back to was this word, together. Together. And what I mean by together is something that we're going to see in this passage from Philippians chapter 2, and the Apostle Paul writes to the early church in Philippi. And I want to read that verse, but just talk about what we can experience together. And even as I say that word, we can hear it and interpret it 100 different ways. And that's okay. That's the beauty of this. But what it means is that as we do ministry, as we encounter Jesus, as we grow together, as we, serve together, as we go impact our world together, it's all about doing these things together. And when I hear that word together and you hear that word together, our inclination or our first thought is to think about the Sunday morning gathering or life groups and being next to each other, shoulder to shoulder with each other. And I want to look at this passage in Philippians because I think it goes way beyond just physically being in the same room together. That is an aspect of together, but it's not the only aspect of it. And so let's look at Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 2. It'll be on the screen for you there. It says, "Is there any encouragement from belonging to Christ? Any comfort from His love? Any fellowship together in the Spirit? Are your hearts tender and compassionate? Then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and purpose." And as I look at this passage, one thing that really stood out to me is Paul is contending for the church in Philippi to experience being together, right? United in heart and in mind, working together in these ways, being wholeheartedly in agreement with one another. There's unity, there's purpose, there's value, there's identity, there's belonging. There's all of these things. There's encouragement and compassion and comfort, all these key buzzwords that you see in this passage. But as he's writing this, and this is the huge dynamic that I picked up on as I was studying this, Paul is writing this passage of Scripture not in the midst of this crowd of people. He's writing this letter while he's in prison. He is writing about being together, but he is not going to ever be with them. He is not together in their presence. He's praying and contending and hoping for them to experience something that isn't dependent upon him physically being in the room. So the idea that when I say together, all I want is, well, I hope our church shows up on Sundays, it's so far beyond that. I would hope that we would experience what Paul is describing here, these key phrases, these key words, this idea of being united, comforted, compassionate, encouraging, right? Bonded together in these ways, united in heart and in mind, wholeheartedly agreeing with one another, loving one another in these ways, right? That's together. And whether or not we are physically in the space sharing the same room, what this encourages me in is that we are contending for a unity within our church as we move forward. Unity in purpose, unity in values, unity in goals, unity in direction that we're headed towards. And the beauty of when Paul is writing this is he's writing to a group of people who want to experience the unity of God, but there's a lot of division that's happening. There's hostility within the early church. There's people that are trying to say, well, unity means conformity and it means uniformity. And what Paul is saying is it's so much more than uniformity. I don't want you to just look the same way and sound the same way and be carbon copies of each other. That's not what together is either. Together is not conformity. Together is this unity of heart, this unity of mind, this unity of passions and directions. And he's asking these rhetorical questions at the beginning to foster this unity within them. Hey, have you experienced comfort from Jesus? Yes. Have you experienced comfort from the power of God? Yes. Have you been encouraged by belonging to Christ? Yes. Do you have fellowship with the Spirit of God? Are you one with God? Yes. Guess what? The thing that brings us together is not a personality, is not a building, is not a program. The thing that brings us together is Jesus. And that's what Jesus is getting, or excuse me, what Paul is getting at in this passage. And that is my prayer for us this year, that we would be a people, a community of believers who are together around Jesus. We are building our lives around Jesus. And this word has been rattling in my mind and my heart, sitting in my slow cooker, so to speak, for quite a while now. And as I've been wrestling with this and thinking about this, this is to be a word that would guide and to direct our ministry approach, the programs we do, the outreaches we do, the discipleship things that we do. It is about fostering that idea of being together. When we do a prayer night, man, we are praying together. When we do an outreach, we are serving together, impacting together. When we're joining a team, we are reaching each other. We are serving one another, right? But we're doing that together with our skills and our abilities and our talents and our time and our resources and everything that we're doing. In fact, I was thinking about all of our series this year. I got away with some pastors last month and had a time to just forecast and pray and contend for what the future sermons are going to be for 2024. And I began to see that word together as a common thread throughout this. And so I'm really excited. After our family series, we're right in the middle of this Family Matters series, but what is that all about? It's about the togetherness of faith and family, right? How do you bring those two elements of your life together, right? Faith and family. That's a series that we're doing. But after that, we're going to do a series on fasting and feasting. And it's going to prepare our hearts for the Easter season. This idea of giving things up and fasting for God and feasting and celebrating what God has done and where he's going with us, right? But it's feasting. It's seeking God together through fasting and feasting. Then we're going to look at the story of Abraham and this guy in the Old Testament named Abraham and his journey with God and this concept of being together with God as we're navigating life. We're going to do a series on the book of Titus in the fall. And this one is all about being on mission together, doing good together, that we are united in our approach, right? Not carbon copies, but there's a unity of heart, unity of passion, unity of mission. And this is the word that as we think about 2024 in Hub City Church, I hope that this is the word that rings within your heart. This would be a word that would characterize this year. As we are praying for our church and we are serving our church and giving to our church and attending our church and being with our church, that this word together would be something that would motivate and guide and give us vision for this year. And we would embody what the togetherness that Paul describes can look like.